Good afternoon. David Lapp here coming to you live from my office in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, joined by Chris Purcell. We are excited to share this afternoon about generosity, about giving. We're in the Christmas season, and just wanted to, is giving, is that something that we do out of obedience? What is it? But yeah, as we get into it, today is the December the 18th. We are was a week away from Christmas. Not sure where 2025 got to. It seems like we just had Christmas, but here we are again. So, anything you want to share here, Chris, as we kick things off?
Well, I think as we get into it too, I want to hear a little bit about your Florida trip as well. But let's dive into the scripture first, and we'll dive into how giving and networking and all those things that we've been discussing about kind of all connect and become something one as one, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
sort of clicked that button before I was ready for it, but you can go ahead, just jump into
No,
this.
it's okay. Matthew 6 is where we're focused today, verses 19 through 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I think the key there is verse 21 with as it relates to what we want to talk about today with giving. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We value our treasure. We value these things that we earn and the ways in which we're blessed in this world, as we should, because it's in the value of these things that we're able to make a difference, that we're able to be more present in this world. And not that we need wealth in order to be deemed successful in God's eyes, but that wealth certainly allows us to have a more physical and manifestable way of showing what we love and showing where our hearts are.
Mhm.
So that's some of what we'll talk about, I think, over the coming weeks as we focus a little bit on giving. But with as it relates to giving as obedience or an expression of our heart, I think this just ties in deeply because our heart is closely tied to our treasure, and where our treasure ultimately does go is likely an expression of our heart, whether it comes out of a place of obedience or not.
Yeah. I think, a lot of people, we're here at the end of the year, obviously representing Blessings of Hope, as, this is a nonprofit that we're connected to. And a lot of giving happens at the year end, and if you are watching this and you have donated to Blessing the Hope, we just want to thank you for that. There's so many people that pour into the organization that really make it really make it possible for us to do what we do. And we can look at giving as, as a necessity or as a duty. But the way I like to look at giving is it's an opportunity to take a little bit of what God has blessed us with and sow it into something bigger than ourselves. Uh, I know some people, over the years have challenged our, fundraising, like, why are you always asking for money? That kind of thing. But if you really step back and look at the whole giving to a nonprofit concept, you're really not giving to the people that are managing the nonprofit or that are stewarding the organization. You're giving into allowing the organization to thrive and to continue to serve, to fulfill its mission. Quite frankly, I could probably get a job that would pay me more than I get paid here at Blessings of Hope. But the passion that God has put on our heart to serve is really what drives us to do what we do. So when you give to Blessings of Hope, you're not giving to me directly. You're not giving to Chris directly. Yes, we
Mhm.
do get paid out of Blessings of Hope, but it is so we can put our passion and our focus into the ministry. And as I think about here at the end of the year, the Christmas season is often a season of giving, a season of blessing other people, and that there's so much joy in that. As a child, I was, there's a time of year we always look forward to, and now having children of my own, it is a highlight of the month or highlight of the year is,
Mhm.
how many days till Christmas, that kind of a thing. Any thoughts on that, Chris, as we jump into this?
No, you're 100% right. And I think even that season of generosity that Christmas is shapes us and turns us into something different as well. I mean, I know even with my own children, um, I'm trying to instill in them the idea that it's better to give than to receive. And I don't want to I don't want to give a perception that receiving a gift is necessarily a bad thing, but I want to make sure that I'm imparting on how giving up something of ourselves really can shape us. And I think it relates to, and this is personal, but like it relates to why we do the work in ministry that we do, right? And why I think a lot of people that work in ministry, I happen to work in two contexts, working in a church and then also working here at Blessings of Hope, where it's like I'm doing it both because there is some payoff, but there at the same time, I'm doing it because there is more of a practical reality to the work that I'm doing where that value in the work is a pay. I used to joke, I used to work in television and kind of work in TV news and stuff. And whenever people would apply for jobs in Florida, they would say, just don't expect too much, right? They pay you in sunshine as well as the paycheck. And that there's a reality to that, maybe not, but the harsh reality to it is at a high level, there's so much about the context of the work that we do that shapes us, the and how we might be earning something or what we're kind of leaving to the side as a priority. And I think that's where giving as an expression of who we are becomes like, even in situations where we're receiving, we're giving up something to be where we are. We're giving up something maybe practically that's more than what we might otherwise, like you were noting about your own job and pay. It's a bigger picture thing than what can be easily summarized in a
Yeah.
20-minute podcast.
And I know early on when we started the ministry, we had this mindset or this idea that if you're working in the ministry, you should be paid less. You should be willing to receive half of the level pay that you're worth. And we had people that would do that for a year or two, but the challenge became when they were no longer able to survive to feed their own family or to fulfill their own needs, they would go find another job that paid them more. And then we had to
Mhm.
hire three people to replace them. And neither of the three people were willing to work for what he was working for before. And now we just lost our best employee because somebody else was willing to offer him more. And we had to, at the same time, now we had to pay three times the money to replace him or more, and we had to start over and retrain everybody. And we recognize that it is always better that if somebody serves in ministry, if they give because they want to give and not because the ministry forces them to give in order to even have
Mm.
a job. And we have most of our employees at Blessing of Hope give back to the ministry, a portion of what God has blessed them with. And I think that's a much better way to approach it than it is to say, hey, we know you're worth this much, but we're only going to pay you 75% of that because you're serving God. And if you really think about it, why can a secular organization pay somebody what they're worth, but a kingdom focused organization that is serving God is like, well, we're just this poor organization. We really can't
Mhm.
pay you what you're worth. We're going to force you to give some of your time to God. It's like, why? And those are stuff we had to wrestle through in the early days.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense.
But back
Um,
back to the theme of giving. Giving, if it comes from the abundance of the heart, everybody's going to feel good about it. Versus if you almost force somebody to give more than they're really willing to give or able to give, and it can really strain relationships.
right. Yeah, and it's why I think, no matter who might be listening today, it when it comes to our conversation about giving, we are talking about it as a holistic practice. Yes, there's a request in here. As two people who represent Blessings of Hope, if you haven't received this message yet this year, let this be the moment you receive the message. If your heart leads you into it, we would love for you to find the time and the space and ability to be able to share in your time and talents and treasures to be able to give some of that to Blessings of Hope now and in the new year. We are raising funds to cover our expenses here at the end of the year. But the big part of that is that when you do that, like, we're acknowledging Blessings of Hope, and I hope a lot of other nonprofits and churches are doing this as well. We're bringing you into this ministry as a partner in this ministry, not as this just someone who's paying a bill and helping us get through. This is one of the very valuable ways in which you're expressing your heart and you ultimately become a partner in whatever ministry you are giving towards. And I think people need to become more comfortable with that. And that means speaking up. That means having a voice in the relative world of that ministry. That means knowing that you are valued and your gift that you might have given annually for the last 3 years is appreciated and somewhat anticipated in this year as well, because it becomes a something that we count on.
So yeah, in a sense, it really empowers the organization to do what we've been called to do. And the fact of the matter is, if there would be no support for Blessing the Hope as an organization, we just couldn't do what we do. Chris and I would both have to go find another job. And not saying that would be hard to do or that would be wrong, but it would hinder the work that God is doing through Blessing the Hope to go forward. So yeah, like Chris said, if you have a passion to see the hungry fed, to see food being stewarded well, and making an impact for God's kingdom at the same time, we invite you to partner with us here at Blessing of Hope. If there's other interests that you have, Blessing of Hope is not the only charity in the area, or the only, or the best, or we don't hold a corner of the market. But I would recommend anybody to find some organization that you're passionate about, some cause that's bigger than yourself, something that you can passionately get involved in and help change society for the future. I look at government run programs. People complain about their taxes are so high. I believe one of the reasons your taxes are high is because we are not, as the body of Christ, stepping up and serving our communities to the point where we're doing it efficiently and we're able to steward our resources for God's kingdom. See, the easy way out is just to pay taxes and let the government figure it out. But I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that the private sector can do a better job of serving our communities than the government can. So I'm not going to fault the government for the programs they have in place to serve our communities. What I am going to do is challenge you as a listener, as an individual, to actually get involved in your community. Use the funds that you would have had to pay in taxes to invest into bettering the community, into building up your community, into serving nonprofits, into sowing beyond just the return that you can get, and through that we can make a difference in our communities, to where some of these government programs are going to be unnecessary. And we can look at what the government's doing wrong and how they're being wasteful and how they're always raising taxes and how they're always taking money from the private sector, or we can look at what has God entrusted to us as a community. How can we utilize and best steward the resources that God has given us in a generous way, in a giving way, in a serving way, and actually impact our community, impact our nation for God's kingdom? There's strategic ways to do that. And I think just getting the mindset shift of what can I give versus what can I get from a community will literally shift the way that community looks at its role on earth.
Another thing to consider too, it was just coming to mind as you were talking, was this idea of kind of the feast or famine when it comes to the work that we do in ministry as well. for the most part, ministries are doing their work with limited budgets and with limited capability. Therefore, the practical ways in which the ministries are working and succeeding are limited by the budget itself, right?
Mhm.
So the potential is limited. Imagine a world where our nonprofits weren't just fully funded, but they were well overfunded to not just do baseline ideas because it's what sits right in front of them, but they can do these really amazing and miraculous things. It's been a long time since I followed up on it, but I'll use this example. My wife's grandfather was in the early days of the Heifer Project. And the Heifer Project, when they would take livestock overseas to other countries to help them build up farms. And it was in the days where they would literally have to transfer weight. So they would drop off the livestock in these other countries and they would pick up sand in order to counterbalance the boat and actually come back. This was like in the first couple of years of the Heifer Project. There's an example of a ministry of a nonprofit that has existed for a very long time as a result and has evolved.
Mhm.
But their evolution wasn't just because they were evolving with the world. Their evolution was also because as funding became more available, they found better ways that they were able to do it, a larger impact that was able to be made.
Mhm.
So our I'll speak for Blessings of Hope and say our dreams of Blessings of Hope aren't limited by the current financial situation. We're dreaming into the future and praying over what God will provide into this ministry to make those dreams possible. But there's also a different reality to seeing those numbers in the account that actually help make those dreams reality and help think, oh, maybe even that dream was smaller than what God had planned.
Yeah.
Um, so it really does take that deep partnership of generosity to make it something special.
I think part of what we're looking at is what has God called us to while we're on earth, while we're here, and you know how much time are we going to spend trying to tell God, well, that would never work. And there's voices out there that would they accuse nonprofits of spending OPM or other people's money. But if you really gave that gift to God to further that ministry, is the nonprofit spending other people's money, or is it spending money that God entrusted to that nonprofit to spend to further the mission? So a lot of that is how do you look at it, and how do and I would challenge you, if you think a nonprofit is spending OPM or other people's money, if you're in business yourself and you're selling a product and somebody pays you for that product, is that the same thing where you're spending OPM, or is that your money because you gave them a product? Because as a nonprofit, what we have to offer is a service to the community. And if people invest into that and they give money to the ministry, it no longer is OPM. It is now the ministry's funds to advance the mission that God has entrusted to the ministry. So there's different ways of looking at it. I tend to believe that if I give money to a nonprofit or to a church or to a ministry, I like to see it where they decide to how to utilize those funds. And at Blessings of Hope, I know a lot of people do the same to Blessings of Hope, and I really appreciate that. Where they give a gift to further the minister wherever it's needed the most. Now there are some gifts that we receive that say, hey, we want these funds to go to a project. Not a problem, as long as that project needs to be done. But the way I like to see it is, personally, if I give money to another nonprofit, which I do on a regular basis, I like to let them decide what is most important in their budget to get funded based on their vision for what God has given them for that organization. So, yeah, there's we could go all kinds of different ways with this, but I think as a community that grows together, serves together, we can have so much more impact than if we all try to do our own thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We're running out of time here, Chris. Anything you want to say before we wrap
I
this
didn't even
up?
see our time. No, I appreciate that. This was a good conversation. Thank you, those who have joined us and will join us on the recording. Please don't come away from this conversation feeling like anyone wants to guilt you into giving what you're not able to give. What we want to do is really call you out of whatever restriction might be holding you back, if it is possible for you to be able to give and to find a way to make an impact, to find a way to be generous, not because you have to, even though, again, that might be part of your faith and the work that you do, but because you are being shaped and because you are shaping, and both are being done in and through God. So just let God work,
Yeah.
and let's be a part of the God community that's been created for us.
Another thing that I've heard already is it is impossible to be angry while you're actually serving or giving something.
Mm,
And it's, if you are just struggling and dealing with life, I would challenge you to push through whatever it is and actually find a way that you can serve somebody, you can bless somebody, you can give somebody something, and I believe it will literally shift your life. So,
mm, amen.
yeah. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, this made sense. We would love to hear some feedback. If you have questions, if you have things you want us to discuss in a future episode, click the link on the description here. We would love to hear your feedback. Uh, if you disagree, I would love to. I would love to have that conversation too. So, whatever you want to share with us, share your opinions, share your disagreements, share your agreements. We are here to serve. We're here to learn, and it's a fun way to live where we don't have anything to prove. We're just this is the way we believe, and we're here to make a difference on earth as long as God allows us to. So